You won't be going through it. So that's one of the nice things. You're not going to have to try to coordinate the content with keeping your slides moving, and actually I think that's beneficial for you because this is it. This is your outline.
Other questions. So in terms of tone, what can they do to practice? Say they have a very soft voice.
Well, I think that's where the feedback, and I think that's where you get someone in the back of the room to say you need to project louder, because a lot of times that is a real challenge for our public speaking students because they've never been in situations where they've had to project. How do you project? It's not just shouting, it's not shouting, but it is trying to get the volume up, and sometimes you don't know if it's loud enough or not until you get that feedback. And so it's the same thing that anything that practice does. It helps if you have somebody who can replicate the situation. So I mean, if your friend is sitting in front of you, that's not going to give you the same kind of feedback as someone who's in the farthest area of the room. So that would, I think, feedback would be very helpful to get that sense of you're not loud enough or I'm straining to hear you. Other questions or other?
Will there be lav mics on the presenters? Okay.
Yes, so each of you will have a microphone, and so we will have 3 microphones for the person presenting and then the next 2 people, and so you will have that microphone. But you'll still need to project, and the microphone is actually more for the recording versus the speaking.
Maybe an actress?
So they'll be on a stage.
They'll be on a stage, and it's a big room.
Will there?
Asher is tall, above the platform.
Will there be an opportunity to practice in that space for the finalists?
No, probably not, because that room has to be reserved. So you can come to the library, you can come here, and in most competitions, you do not get to practice in your final venue. So you have to practice in other venues. The library does have recording studios, and you can practice here and then listen to your presentation. But probably not, because that room is only on, you have to reserve that room.
So I would say good luck with this. It's, I think, a great opportunity to present your research. But I do think it's challenging to try to do anything within a tight time frame. And 3 minutes is fairly tight. I mean, the speeches we do for public speaking class, probably the shortest speech is 5 minutes, and the longest speech is 10 minutes. And some students have a problem meeting 3 minutes, but most students spend a lot of time in trying to narrow it down, getting their content to fit that time frame. Well, thank you for inviting me, and good luck on the competition. See you. Oh, see you in a little while. Right? All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Nasserini. I'm the Associate Dean of the Graduate College, but I'm also from the School I was also in the School of Music. I'm a performing musician. I've been playing the clarinet for 30 years. All of my degrees are in performance, and I've literally been on stage and performed all around the world. I've been on the world stages doing concerts, and in fact, last week I just finished a concert tour for my new CD through Louisiana and Mississippi. So my thought is I should come in and talk a little bit about performance anxiety because this is something that everyone deals with in a sort of a different way. And this is something I talk to my students a lot about. Every semester we have a performance anxiety day in studio class where I take them through. Now this obviously is not going to be as detailed as something like that, but what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about performance anxiety, because what you're going to be doing is performing. You are going to be getting up in front of an audience and presenting yourself in a certain way. And that in itself can create a lot of anxiety in people. So I just sort of came up with some bullets. I usually like to break it down into 3 general ways of thinking about it. Mental. First of all, acknowledging the facts. The facts are the majority of you are going to be nervous. For those of you who, for someone to say, oh, don't worry about it, or oh, relax, they don't get it, right? And it's some people are natural performers. They get up on stage and they don't have any problems. I've been performing for a long time, and I still get nervous when I step up on stage. So just acknowledging the fact that you're going to be nervous can really help manage the level of anxiety because you're anticipating what's going to be happening. There are certain physiological things that occur that make you nervous. Your heart rate increases, you might start to sweat. I'm a huge sweater on stage, so I always have a handkerchief in my pocket. But the more I perform, the more I know these things happen, so I can prepare for them. I still get nervous, but I prepare for it. So acknowledging the facts. What makes you nervous? Do you get nervous? When you get nervous, what do you tend to do? Do you tend to speak faster? Do you tend to speak slower? Do you tend to speak louder? So knowing the facts around what your physical behavior is when you get nervous will help you prepare better for it. The next one, what is your focus? This is something I talk about with my students all the time. By the time you are on stage, it is no longer about you. It is no longer about the audience. It's about the product. The reason why most people get nervous and make mistakes on stage is because they're thinking about themselves. It's no longer about you. If you are using the word I in your head on stage, it's over. Because then you're turning the intention this way. If you think about the audience, what are they thinking about? They don't like me. They hate me. I'm wearing the wrong clothes. Whatever it is you want. Then you're putting the energy to them, and you're obsessing about what they're thinking. In all of those situations, you're taking away from what you need to be focusing on. It's the product. What are you saying? And for me as a musician, I always say, I want to give the music to the audience. That's all I do. So as I am playing, in my head, I'm saying, give it away, give it away, give it away. So that's the idea. You have 3 minutes to present your information. Be focused on giving information to an audience, not on you as a person and not on the audience as a person. What are your fears? The typical fears are, I'm going to fail. I'm a fraud. Those are things I often said in graduate school when I was up on stage playing. In the middle of recitals, I'd say, I'm a complete fraud, and after this recital, I'm selling my clarinets and quitting. That is an unhealthy thing to be saying to yourself while you're on stage trying to complete a degree recital, right? So if you're up on stage saying, I'm a fraud, I don't know what I'm talking about, these people don't understand what I'm talking about, you're taking away from the point of it. So knowing what your fears are. Typically your fears are, I'm going to fail, right? And all of those things. So acknowledging your fears and taking those fears to the next logical step. So for me, it was always, I'm a fraud. I don't deserve to be here. And then I'd think about it outside of the performance venue and go, well, wait a minute. Let's think about this. These universities have granted me these degrees. I've practiced and done my work. I know about this, I know about that. All the empirical evidence is sort of pointing to the fact that I do know what I'm doing. So you're combating your fears away from the performance venue so that then when those fears come up, you can shut them down instead of letting them run around in your head. So think about your fears. What are your fears about being in front of people? We don't want to fail, we don't want to look foolish. Those are the two most typical ones. Address them before you go in to do your work, and it'll be better prepared. And then, where's your perspective? My best thing I say to my students is they will just become completely unhinged when they don't do well on stage. And I say, can we all put some perspective here? You didn't play a good Mozart concerto. Did anyone die? Were children being, trampled in the streets by crowds of people who were outraged at how badly you played? No, it's just a Mozart concerto. Relax. It's not that we want to take away from the importance of the event, but you got to sort of put it in perspective. We are not brain surgeons. We don't have people's lives in our hand. We're doing this because we love what we do. We're passionate about what we do, and we want other people to see and enjoy the passion in which we bring to our areas of interest. This is what makes us scholars. This is what makes us excited. This is what makes us privileged to be part of this. Enjoy that. Put it in perspective. It's 3 minutes of your life, right? If something doesn't go right, That's okay. And the last thing I'll say about perspective is, my students will often, and musicians do this, we tie our self-worth into what we do. I played well, I'm a good person. I played poorly, I'm a bad person. It doesn't work that way. There are so many other aspects to who you are. So I always say, I think you're a lovely person and you're wonderful. Your Mozart concerto sounds horrible. Let's fix it, right? But it has nothing to do with who you are as a person. But because we get so tied into what we do, we equate our self-worth with every moment that we are expressing what it is we feel passionately about, right? If for some of us who go to yoga class and we're not like yogis, we fall over and we laugh. We're like, oh, whatever. But if we were like supposed to be like Bikram himself, you know, and we fell over, it would be a disaster, right? Nah, just get that perspective in your head. Do it because you love it, do it because you're passionate, not because it completes you and it is you. It's not. There's much more to you. Give yourself more credit than that. So, those are some mental things to think about before you get into the process. You have to practice that. It's not just like, I can't give you a magic pill and it happens. These are things that have developed over a long time. Physical. When do you do your best in anything? Athletes, musicians, Olympics were just on. When do they do their best? When do you think people do their best in athletics?
When they're rested.
When they're rested, which means, I'm thinking something bigger. When you are relaxed. Anything you do, you will do better when you're relaxed, right? Remember that. So for someone to say, oh, relax, doesn't work. So how do you relax? I ask my students this all the time. I say, all right, how many of you practice relaxing? And none of, as in sleep doesn't count, right? Active relaxing. How many of you practice that? Maybe, some. Most of us don't. We go from one thing to the next to the next. We're constantly checking our phones. We're checking our email. Well, I have some downtime. I need to go, I'll watch a movie. I'll watch TV. How many of you actually sit in your living room with nothing on the couch, and just sit there? If you don't practice relaxing, how in the world would you be able to relax when you need to? It's just like asking someone to, I don't know, go down a slalom on skis if they've never done it before. So we have this sort of idea of how to relax, but I always ask my students, what are you doing to actively relax? And we're not talking you have to spend hours doing it, right? You obviously have other things to do. Take 10 minutes a day to actively be calm. And as you're doing it, you are processing, what does my body feel like? What is my breathing pattern like? What does my heart rate feel like? It's almost meditative. And for some people it is meditation. That's how I practice relaxing, is meditating. But other people, you can just sit there. And that, you get that sort of kinesthetic awareness of what it feels like to be relaxed, and then you recreate that as much as you can before and while you're on stage. I always know when I'm starting to get tense when I'm playing on stage, because I start to sweat and my shoulders come up. And then I have to do this. I'm doing this all the time on stage because I know what it feels like to be relaxed. So practice active relaxing. What are you putting into your body the day that you have to perform? Some foods are great and some foods are not. So my general rule is the day of a performance, I cut my caffeine intake in half. I don't eat any refined sugar. And every meal has a little bit of carbs, a little bit of vegetables, a little bit of protein. That's it. The only type of sugar you should be getting is from fructose, from fruit. You would be amazed at how much better your body feels when you're about to perform, because performing is almost like an athletic event. You are increasing your heart rate, you're doing all this stuff. So if you're loading up on caffeine and sugar before, you don't need the caffeine. You're already gonna be ramped up. So if you cut that caffeine in half, it's so much better for you. And that really helps a lot. So balancing what you're putting in your body. And how are you preparing? How are you practicing? Are you running your speech every day? Are you pretending that your living room is the stage and you walk in the door and you close the door and you do your speech without stopping? When you practice it and you mess up, do you stop and start over, or do you keep going? These are all things you need to be thinking about. So with the practice, as much as you can, you need to recreate the situation. When I was a student, what I would do is pretend that this practice room was the stage. And I would walk out and pretend that I was backstage and walk into the practice room. And as soon as I walked into the practice room, I was on stage, which meant as soon as I started a piece, I couldn't stop no matter what. Whatever disaster may have happened, I had to work through it, right? You recreate the situation so that you know how to recover. In musicians' worlds, we like to say the art is in the recovery. And it's just so true. You're going to make a mistake. I promise you will. If you don't, good for you. I have never managed to ever not make a mistake in anything I do, and I just laugh about it. But my recovery from it, you can't become derailed. So recreate the situation, establish a routine. When are you practicing the speech? I usually like to practice performing around the time that I'm going to perform, so that I know that gives me a sense of comfort. And if you do it every day, it's just like when it comes time to do it, you're just doing it again. It's not any different. It's like, oh, I've done this for 2 weeks in a row every night at 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock, I guess it's time to do this again. But this time you're on stage. You're tricking your brain. And I just saw something about that. It was ridiculous. It was CNN. Some guy was talking about, oh, I wrote this book about these great athletes, and what they do is, when they go to Olympics, they don't freeze up because they just pretend like it's another day, and every practice is just like the event. And I was like outraged. I'm like, yeah, musicians have been doing this for 300 years. This is not unique. But he's making thousands and millions of dollars on this book that we've been doing forever, right? I just thought it was completely outrageous. It's like, yeah, duh. So if you treat it like that, okay, 7 o'clock, time to do my speech, it takes a lot of the anxiety away. And the last thing is, and I can't emphasize this enough, is record yourself. As much as you hate to hear yourself, I hate to hear myself talk and I hate to hear myself play. But I just listened to a live recording of my tour last week at Ole Miss. And I listened to one of the solo pieces while I was eating lunch. And I was like, there are a couple of things in there. Had I just recorded myself before I went on tour, I could have fixed those. And because when it was something that I did, I was like, oh, I didn't realize I cut that note off so short. And I didn't do this, and I didn't do that. And I thought, well, I didn't even follow my own advice. Record yourself and listen back and make notes. You will notice when you rush your words. You'll notice when you muddle words. You'll notice your diction, all of these things. So record yourself and critique and run your speech for someone, multiple people, and have them give you feedback as well. Again, some of these are just sort of like, very obvious things, but when you present them all together, really what it is just to decrease that level of anxiety and put a label on your nervousness and be able to bring it down and be more, you need to enjoy yourself. You're choosing to do this, right? I keep telling my students that. If playing the clarinet creates you this much angst, you need to stop right now, because your whole life is going to be tears, right? You do this because you want to do it. No one's forcing you, so enjoy it. This is really cool. This is like the coolest thing. I can't wait to hear all of these projects, but I would hate to have someone up there shaking and like they're being tortured and they're doing this, right? You don't want to do that. That makes the audience feel uncomfortable. You don't want to make your audience feel uncomfortable. So those are just a few things. Oh, and I just have one other set of resources for you real quick.
I put those at the very end.
Oh, great. All right. So book that changed my life, and you'll see it, but the book that changed my life is Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner. He's a jazz pianist. I was going through a really hard time performing. I was doing this national touring Broadway show. I was 26. I didn't feel like I belonged being with all these New York guys. I was way out of my league. And I was just messing up a lot. And I read his book one night, and it was amazing. Because basically he was like, if I, one of the most famous jazz pianists, Kenny Werner, stopped playing the piano, the world would continue. there would be a few people who would say, oh, Kenny's not playing piano anymore. He's like, and then that's it. They'd forget about you. Because basically what he's saying is, you're not that important. So then do it for you. You know, and so taking that pressure off of yourself that you're changing the world with it. It's just a performance. You have many more. So Kenny Warner's book, there's also the Inner Game of Tennis, which you can take the word tennis out and put anything you want. Inner game of badminton, inner game of music, inner game of crocheting, whatever. And then there are a couple of other websites I linked to, musician websites. So, any questions for me about performance anxiety?
I guess one thing, it seems like whenever I speak, I start losing track of how quickly I'm speaking and just trying to control that, and you know, some of the techniques maybe that you would have to control that?
When you're speaking really fast, and I tend to be a fast speaker as well, is I actually feel the tongue go against my teeth as I form words, and it slows me down. So as I'm talking, like I realized about, I don't know, 3 minutes into my thing for you, I'm just like, oh, and I went, wait a minute. And then I start feeling the way my tongue is hitting against the roof of my mouth and my teeth, and it's very conscious, and then it slows down my diction. That's a way to slow down your talking. And I was sitting there, I thought, oh, I have to talk to all these really smart graduate students. And I got a little nervous, and I went, wait a minute, okay, no, you don't need me. And I invoke some of this, you know, stuff. You would think talking in front of a crowd is not a big deal for me, but it's a big deal for everyone. So. Any other questions? Any other advice I can give you? Have fun. This is such a cool thing. I'm so excited, and just have fun. And you're going to be great. You're all going to be great. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so in your handouts, and does everyone have a copy of your handouts? Okay, in your handouts, we have, you know, this, a lot of the stuff that we've been presenting on is making the most of your 3 minutes. And this is part of the national project that's going on, the 3-minute pieces. We expanded it and we kind of borrowed heavily from it. And we did the 3-minute research presentation. But read that at your leisure. We've touched on many of the points that are in there and some more. The resources are also in there. And then the judging criteria. And I just want to review that real briefly with you right now. So really you're being judged on 3 major criteria: comprehension, engagement, and communication. So did your presentation, did the information that you're presenting on, did it help the audience understand your research? Do you have some? You don't have the handout?
Oh, no, I have it.
Okay. Okay. Did the presenter clearly outline the goals and the nature of the research? So do we know what you're studying? You know, at the end of it, you're saying, what is this person doing? Probably you won't rate high on comprehension. Did it follow a logical sequence? Remember we talked earlier, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Did the PowerPoint slide enhance the presentation? Are we going to see the English one today?
No.
Okay, there was, and is it on our website? Yeah, it's on our website, so you can go see it. And I was wondering, so this English, the student from, I don't know which university, she was talking about her research, and it was fascinating. He's like, okay, and her research was basically rewriting an old book that was, and that's what I guess English people do. You know, I'm a psychologist, I don't understand what English people do. So, but this book was written in very old prose, and it was very hard to understand. And the manuscript was like in this all caps font, and it was like the only copy in some library of, you know, maybe Library of Congress or something. And it was a fascinating book, but was really not available to the wider audience, you know. So her thesis was basically taking this work, rewriting it in modern language, like how you and I speak, and using commas and sentence structures. So basically taking the same thing but making it so everyone could enjoy this one. That was her thesis. How do you present that in 3 minutes? And how do you present it to a lay audience and tell them how exciting? And it was on King Henry VIII. How many of you have heard of King Henry VIII? Okay, almost all of you have. That's good. King Henry VIII is somebody you could say and get away with. But if you're going to use the name of, say, one of your researchers, I might get away with using Freud. I think most people know who Freud is. But if I'm talking about Albert Ellis, how many of you know who Albert Ellis is? Pretty famous guy, but not everybody knows him. So if I'm going to say, well, Albert Ellis said this, and I look at my audience, and they're like, who? And you look at them like, gosh, you guys are really dumb. You don't know who Albert Ellis is. So explain who that Albert Ellis is. You know, don't assume your audience knows who Albert Ellis is, except for a few people like the Pope and maybe Freud and a few others, you know, maybe Newton, you know. But explain who it is, you know. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so this English person was talking about King Henry VIII. The book was on King Henry VIII. And of course, then she managed to get a joke in, which is easy to do if you're talking about King Henry VIII and his 6 wives, and beheaded most of them, I think. So she managed to get a nice little joke, got the whole audience laughing. And so I was thinking, what is her slide going to be? You know, what is she going to pick for her slide? And what she did was, her slide was, she took a picture of this book, or a page from the book. And that was her slide. And that slide really depicted how horrible this book looked. You know, it was hard to read. I mean, it really illustrated why her research was important and why she should be doing this work. And I was thinking, I said, that was pretty clever. She obviously was one of the prize winners, because that's who most of the videos we show on our website. And you're thinking, what is she going to, what will an English student show on a 1-slide presentation? I thought she did really good in picking that slide. And obviously she won too, so. So engagement, so did the PowerPoint slide enhance the presentation? Did the presenter use a narrative story to help the audience comprehend the research? You know, so some kind of narrative, some kind of story. All of you have probably seen Jenny Liu. We had a student here who did really well. She actually went to meet with the Nobel laureates, and her name is Cindy Liu. And I always want to say her name, but it's, some of you know Cindy Liu, right? She was a biologist, she just graduated. She worked in Paul Kimes' lab. But this is Jenny Liu. And, you know, and I loved her example. I mean, let me see her again. The use of bread. How many of us, I mean, every single person in the audience can relate to bread. We've all had bread, whether it's gluten-free or regular bread. We've all had bread at some point in our life, you know. So, engagement. Did the oral presentation make the audience want to know more? Did they, we talked about the dumbing down of the research. Did they express enthusiasm about their work? You know, that they're excited, this is groundbreaking research. Did they maintain the audience attention? And would you like to know more about their research? When we're going to watch the Facebook one in a few minutes, and when I listened to that, I said, I want to go find out what she really found out about Facebook and how, and I was able to relate to certain parts of it, and you know, it's fascinating. Communication. Was the language appropriate? You know, you don't want somebody to come up to you like that student came to me and asked me if I was speaking in English at the end of my class. You know, was the title communicated in a way related to the topic and significance? Does it make sense? You know, did they use eye contact? Did they vocal range? We talked about all those things. Did they avoid jargon? Did they spend the right amount of time on each element of his or her presentation? Did they go on certain topics and thinking, gosh, that could have used their time better and maybe explaining something else? And did the PowerPoint slide enhance rather than detract from the presentation? So, do you want me to go with the rules too? No. You have the rules in your packet too. The single slide, no electronic media, no additional props, costumes. How many of you wore costumes yesterday for Mardi Gras? So, presentation, spoken word, no raps, you know. We can have fun, but no raps. They will, we will basically start timing you once you start, there's some kind of movement or speech and you start, you know, speaking, and we will time you. We will be handling the slides. And the judge's decision is final, so you can go back and challenge. I did way better than he did, or she did, and, you know. Okay. In your packet, we have extra copies. Where's that?
I have it.
If you want to keep your packet clean and you want to use extra copies, whichever way you want to. What I'd like you to do, you have the judging criteria, okay? And you're going to watch this video. So review the judging criteria. Take about a minute to review the judging criteria. And then you see the three. So write the name of the video we are watching. You don't have to worry about the school or the title for this exercise. And then rate the person on all three, okay? At the end of each video person, or do you think we should do it at the end of all three?
The plan was to, so we're going to do this for the first one, and then we'll just watch the other two. And then let's go ahead and discuss the first one afterwards, and then we'll just watch the other two in a row, and then we can kind of do a little discussion about that at the end.
So, okay, so if you've seen the Jenny one, I've seen it probably 15 times now, but I still enjoy watching it each time, so.
Cancer is so common that it's likely either you or the person sitting next to you will suffer from it. But when it comes to bowel cancer, 80% of cases are preventable. Now, you may have heard that folate is important for pregnant women, but did you know folate may also prevent bowel cancer? You see, folate is present in different forms. Some forms are required for making healthy DNA, such as in the cells of a rapidly growing baby, whereas other forms are required for making a protective chemical coating over DNA called methylation. Low methylation is a defect found in all bowel cancers, so my research asks if folate is related to low methylation and hence bowel cancer. Now, folate research is challenging because it's difficult to measure dietary folate intake. It's present in different forms, and each tissue in our body has different folate needs. So to overcome all these problems, I developed and published a new method that lets me measure the different folate forms in bowel tissue. And using this method, I looked at blood and bowel samples from low folate people, bowel cancer patients, and healthy people. I found that folate deficient patients had a shift in the balance of folate forms, leaving less for methylation. And not surprisingly, the blood of these patients had lower methylation. But what was fascinating was that the same shift in the balance of folate was also present in the bowel of cancer patients, and lo and behold, those samples also had lower methylation. So my research shows for the first time, it's not actually the total amount, but rather it's the relative balance of folate that's important. Just like making a perfect loaf of bread requires the right ratios of flour, butter, salt, and yeast, a healthy cell also has to have the right balance of folate, otherwise low methylation and bowel cancer can result. To confirm this, I need to see if folate deficient people develop bowel cancer, but that would take decades. Instead, I figured out a way to accelerate this process by growing human and mouse intestine cells in a petri dish, and they form these beautiful three-dimensional mini guts like this one I've shown here. So using this method, I'm looking at how nutrient imbalances remove methylation off these mini guts, and this research will be important to help us understand how we can get the right balance of folate to prevent bowel cancer. Thank you.
So, kind of going back on the rating criteria,